Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Leanne here, and today we're going to be making some really simple felt Christmas crackers for your Christmas tree. We're going to be using some toilet roll holders here to make the base of our Christmas cracker. It's pretty simple. You literally just slice it straight up the side to open the toilet roll holder. You're going to roll it really tight into a little tube of its own, tight as possible. It doesn't really matter how tight you make it right now, as long as it's tight enough that it actually bends the toilet roll holder into a new shape, so that when you let go of the cardboard it will create a much narrower tube and it will stay like that. As you can see, it's about half the width that it was originally. So you're just going to take some tape and you're going to secure that just to make sure it doesn't unravel and make it nice and sturdy, and this is going to be the base for our Christmas cracker. I'm just using some normal sellotape to tape along this little edge here. It doesn't need to be glamorous, it's going to be hidden anyway. So just tape that nice and secure, and you have your little tube here. Now you can make this any thickness that you desire. I wanted little thin ones, so I went for this size. If you want to make bigger Christmas crackers, you can use kitchen roll tubes for much longer ones, and I'm going to be using just some kids craft felt. This is really widely available at this time of the year in packs of Christmas colours. It's really inexpensive, and most of the shops that we have around here have packs like this available. Now my Christmas tree is greens and reds and elf themed, so I'm going to go for a green Christmas cracker. Now you need it to come out of the edges of your roll by at least 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches, just to give yourself enough fabric, and you want to completely roll up your little cardboard tube in your felt with it extending out the two ends. Now I'm just roughly trimming this down. I'm not being neat, I don't even care if it's straight, just as long as it goes around my cardboard tube to cover my little cracker here. And we're going to be using hot glue mostly in this project, but you are going to need a little bit of sewing thread and a needle. Now you could do this whole project as a sewing project if you prefer, rather than hot glue. I think it would add a little bit of luxury to this little ornament if you did this with a sewing machine or hand stitching, just to add the stitching detail to this cracker. But for this video I'm going for quickness and simplicity. So you want to mark out a line just past each end of your tube, central in your piece of felt. This is just so you know exactly how far the tube reaches. Now give yourself at least 0.5 centimetre on each side of that, so that when you gather in your cracker later it's not going to be too tight. And you're just going to cut off your ends into little jaggy patterns like this. You can do straight crackers, but I think it looks better if you make a little pattern like this and cut out the felt. Try and keep them of a similar length on each side. I'm just checking again that I did have enough felt to cover my little tube. I wasn't convinced for some reason. And I'm just going to trim off these little zigzag ends. Now nothing here is measured, nothing is precise. This is a handmade look that we're going for, so I'm not being too neat with how I'm making this little thing. So once you've got it all cut like this, I'm going to cut an extra piece of felt. Now you don't need to do this step. I wanted the middle of my cracker to be a different colour. If you want your cracker to be all just one colour, you can miss this step completely. But this is an opportunity if you do want to make yours a little more embellished, to decorate this piece of felt here while it's still flat. You can add so many decorations to this at this point because it's not wrapped around the tube roll. It'll make it so much easier to, for example, to lay down stripes. You can use acrylic paint on felt if you want to paint a pattern on your felt. You can use glitter glue, whatever you decide. You can do it on this separate piece of felt and lay it aside while you work on your main body of your cracker. Now you're going to take some of your thread and needle. It doesn't really matter about the colour because you're not really going to see this when we're finished, but I prefer to match just in case. You're going to take a length of your thread and you're going to double it up on your needle. Threading needles is the bane of my existence, and I do own needle threaders, but I'm too lazy to actually go and get them. So you want to double your thread up just to give it a little bit of strength. And I'm just going to place a knot at the end. So what you're going to do with this is those two lines that you've marked on the cracker, you're just going to stitch in and out very loosely along these two lines. And this is so that we can gather the cracker once the felt is in place. These don't need to be the same length or neat, you're literally just making a gathering stitch. And as you can see here, I'm not being too particular. Now once this is done, you want to leave the thread sticking out both sides of your piece of felt, enough that you can get a good grip of them later on. And you're going to do this to both of those lines. Now once you've done this, it's time to put the felt onto your little cardboard tube. So I'm just going to once again check that it fits. I don't know why I had such a problem with this. And the first thing you're going to do is put some hot glue right in the middle of your tube. Now if you're sewing this instead of hot gluing it, you can literally just wrap it around and over stitch the edges together and it should be secure enough. But as I'm hot gluing it, I like to anchor it in the middle first. Then I like to do one edge, roll my little tube to that edge so that it rolls into the glue. I'm using my table just to secure it so I don't get burnt fingers. And then I'm going to do the exact same on the other edge. Now rolling it actually makes it nice and tight and doesn't let it bulge or sag anywhere, and it also keeps your fingers safe from being burned. Now once you've got that all glued, you're going to go back to your little bits of thread that you had, if I can get it untangled here, and you are going to cross them over and pull them tight to gather your little bits of your cracker. Then you're going to tie them in a knot. Now it's really hard to keep it tight at this point, but don't worry, this is why we left our thread a little bit longer. So your first initial tightening of your knot here is just to initially gather it. Do both ends, and then once you've done that, you can puff out the little edges just to make them look nice. And then we're going to take our little bits of string and wrap them around a couple of times and tie them for a second time, and this will just pull in that gather even tighter. Now if you don't want to make it tighter, that's fine. Some people prefer the crackers to be a little looser on the end, but I like mine to be a little more secure, so I'm just tying it a second time and making it that little bit more gathered. Once you've done that, you can cut off your pieces of thread quite close to the knot and leave them for now. Okay, so now we're on to the decorating part. Now this is, at this point you can either decorate this little bit of felt by itself and add it later, or you can do it the way I'm doing it and adding it onto your cracker to be decorated on your cracker. I'm making a really simple cracker, so I don't mind attaching it at this point. In the future, if I was ever going to paint the felt or add lots of maybe sewn on embellishments, I would definitely do it separate. Now I'm going for this red ribbon to make stripes in a sort of traditional candy cane theme. And first I'm going to attach my piece of felt because I actually want to wrap my ribbon around the cracker while it's on there. I think it would probably have been easier to put the stripes on the piece of felt first and then wrap it round. You probably would have got a much neater job, but in hindsight I've already done it this way, so this is the way the video is showing you. With crafting, there's never really any rules or reason. You find the best method that works for you. It might not always be the method that I use, but that is the joy of making handcrafted things. You're just going to roll up your felt nice and taut, everything nice and snug, cut off any excess so you don't have too much bulk. And then we're going to glue that down just to secure it. I think I might try one of these crackers stitching the whole thing just to see how they look and maybe add it to my Instagram, because I think the stitch detail would probably be really cute. So I'm just fluffing out my ends there just to make sure everything's as I want it. So what I'm going to do is wrap my ribbon and glue it at the ends like this, just to make that candy cane theme. Now I think this is probably the easiest and simplest way to decorate your crackers, but you don't need to use ribbon if you don't have that ribbon. There's many different types of ribbon available. You could even cut strips of red felt really thin if you wanted to use just your felt supplies. I'm just going to show you how that would look. You would probably have to cut multiple pieces and put them on one at a time, wrapping around like this. I think felt would look equally cute, especially if you were hand sewing this and adding the little stitches as you went. I also think adding some sequins to this might actually be cute, sequin trim. I know you can also get diamante ribbon, which is long strips of diamante that would probably also look cute. I guess it just is down to your preference and how elaborate you want your little crackers to be. You could also make these with fabric instead of felt. And I've shown you here some glittery red wool would also work if you wanted to take a simple route. I think once you have the base of your cracker made, the endless possibilities of decoration are there. You could do this with children, you could even add names to these. I think they just make a really simple decoration with multiple ways that it could be decorated. But I'm going for the red ribbon because it kind of matches the theme that I have going on my tree that we add to every year. So I'm just going to hot glue it at the start and then wrap it around my cracker. I'm just overlapping it here and I'm going to trim off the edges. And I'm just using that seam as my starting point, so I don't mind if they don't come over past the seam because this is going to be the back of my ornament. Then I'm going to wrap it round nice and snugly. You could secure it with hot glue as you go, but I don't think it's really needed with something this small, and then anchor it at the other end. And once you anchor it, you can then trim it off. And because I spaced these out quite widely, I'm then going to take a second piece of ribbon and go in between the gaps in the same manner, starting at a different point of the cracker. I'm just checking my spacing there to get somewhat similar. I like the handcrafted look when it comes to things like this at Christmas. I like to know that I've added these things myself to my tree, so in years to come I can look back and appreciate that I took all this time when my children were younger to make things like this. I don't mind that they don't look perfect. So I'm just going to anchor that there with the hot glue. Now you could completely do this with paper, wrapping paper, etc. Whatever you have to hand, it doesn't need to be fabric or felt. You could make this with really cute Christmas paper and some paper ribbon or plastic ribbon. It's completely up to you. So I'm just securing that last bit of ribbon down. And I think for me that's where my decorating of this Christmas cracker is going to end. Like I said, I have an elf themed tree and this suits perfectly. I just want to add a little sparkle. So this gold ribbon here came in a children's craft pack along with the felt. I'm just going to take the little oddment that came in the pack, cut it in half. I'm going to singe the edges to make sure they don't fray. Always be careful when you're doing this because sometimes, as you can see, some ribbons will set alight, some will just melt, but sometimes these type will actually get a little flame. Then I'm going to tie one end with each, I'm just going to tie each end with this little piece of ribbon. It was a little bit fiddly because it was a little bit short, but just some careful coaxing and perseverance and I had myself a little bow. I'm not the best when it comes to fiddly things, they drive me crazy, but I do like how it looks when it's done. So once we have the gold on, the last thing we need to do is attach the way in which we're going to hang this to our tree. So I'm just fluffing up my little cracker here and I'm taking my needle and thread from earlier and I'm just going to take myself a little length Now sewing thread is thin enough to be hanging thread. The ones that you buy come with thread not much thicker than this. So I've just gone for the same colour of my cracker just so that it blends in a little bit. You're just going to thread that on your needle and then pick the centre top of your ornament. Here we go, and you're just going to sew through with a little stitch, leave a long end, sew through it again in the exact same place just to secure it there. Then you're going to cut your thread to the same length as the tail you left behind, and you're going to tie a knot in it. And that is literally that simple. And that will hang nicely on your Christmas tree, looking fabulous and cute, and you could make a whole array of them in different patterns but matching colours for a whole set. Sky's the limit. If you make these, please tag me on Facebook or Instagram and let me see, because I love to see other people's work.